Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 1 of Nutanix Weekly. I'm your host, Andy Whiteside. I've got with me Jariah Cox. Jariah, how's it going?
Good, dude. How are you?
I'm doing all right. I'm excited about this. This is my 4th podcast of the day. Monday is going to be my podcast day, but I'm excited to get this one going. It's been a long time coming and looking to work with you and a guy named Harvey Green, our consulting team, to get some more Nutanix content out there and take some blogs from Nutanix and use those to educate more people on what you guys are up to.
Very cool, man. Looking forward to it. Thank you for the opportunity.
I'm checking out your office there in the background. You got looks like the IKEA shelves thing going on in the background. Is that the actual IKEA ones?
Yep. The name brand IKEA, is that a thing?
Yeah, those are the most useful shelves on the planet because you throw whatever little bin inside there you want, and there's nothing you can't put in those things. They're pretty awesome.
Oh yeah, they're replacing some bookshelves because I realized I don't want to see what I'm actually storing on them.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. That's a good idea. Well, so let's talk about what we're going to do here on this podcast. People who listen to my other podcasts know that we basically just take simply blogs that we find interest in, that I find interesting, you find interesting, Harvey finds interesting, and maybe even some of those that listeners submit off the Nutanix site, the blog site. And we just go through those and hopefully, ideally, get the author of the blog to join us. And we try to talk through that and give the listeners a way to consume some of the blogs in a different format. And we also kind of ad-lib along the way and have some of our own conversations as it relates to the topic. Looking forward to doing that with you. What's your background? How did you end up on this podcast with me?
So if you go back far enough, I worked at my local IT help desk in college, then stayed in IT doing various junior help desk stuff. Eventually did the sysadmin thing, Windows servers, VMware servers, Windows storage, and as little networking as I can get away with. And then from there, got my first big break on the VMware team at one of my employers, which was a ton of fun. Learned a lot. Got to go to a couple of VM worlds, learned even more, and switched over to a regional VMware partner. Did the professional services thing. Did a whole lot of vSphere 4 to vSphere 5 upgrades all over the mostly South Carolina, some North Carolina, and then switched over there from the PS role over to the sales role because it turns out sales doesn't have an on-call component to it, which was a big change for me. And then, so then after doing some being an SE there, switched over to being an SE here at Nutanix. So
yeah, well that sounds like most journeys, very much like my journey. And that's what I love about that story the most. And I'm going to go off into an aside here in a second. But what I love about that story the most is the background of actually doing. Right, a lot of people, for better or for worse, I'll say for worse, they show up in our realm that you're in, that I'm in, and they've never been a doer. And it really does change the way you approach things, the way you talk about things once you've been a doer along the way. And I love the fact that you came from the help desk world. I've got a 17, 18-year-old son getting ready to go off to college, and I can't wait till he gets out of school because I'm going to slap him on a help desk somewhere and just make him stay there for a couple of years and learn the ropes around helping people on the fly and really becoming valuable to people and the customer service that goes with it. That's invaluable experience. That and waiting tables, I think, are the two most valuable things you can do to learn how to treat people.
Such pressure cookers for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I still occasionally, if I'm having a really bad day, I wind up looking at Exchange logs and I get some eyelid twitches, but still can do it.
Yeah, you mentioned Exchange logs and just any kind of system logs, and then you mentioned networking a while ago. I'm going to tell a quick story. I can relate probably 80% of what I've known from a technology perspective to taking my first technology class after college when I was in like logistics sales or something. Well, I wasn't logistics sales. But my first class was a A+ from CompTIA. You know what that is?
Oh, yeah.
So had a college intern last year, the year before, and I actually bought him the A+ book, and it must have been 1,300 pages. I don't know. It was ominous. It was so big. And then for whatever reason, and this is really sad that this story even comes out of my mouth, but for whatever reason, this weekend, really early in the morning, like first thing in the morning, I woke up with the idea, hey, I need to get people in my company to go back and learn some of this A+ stuff, because some of the basic routing and switching and subnetting and super masking or supersetting and some of these basic things, memory and BIOS and post and just basic computer stuff, right? There's so many people that these days don't know a lot of those things.
Yeah.
So I went out and looked, and the most amazing thing happened, which is really sad and silly. It turns out the entire A+ course you can watch on YouTube in 5.5 hours now. You don't have to read the book. You watch the whole course, and it's taught by a guy who really knows his stuff. I don't know if I'm going to be watching Netflix documentaries over the next few weeks or going back and watching that course, but just a lot of value in some of those basic things. So going back to my comment to you, I'm excited to do this with you, and it excites me to meet people that have had a lot of experience in the hands-on side of what we work going on a day-to-day basis.
My A+ at this point is so rusty. It was right after they switched from being 1 test to 3 tests.
Mm-hmm.
You had to do like 2 out of 3 different tests to get your A+.
But you remember it talking about the difference between token ring and Ethernet, right?
Oh yeah. I got my Greg Shields taught me my CCNA, and that was some great content. And even back then, right, it was like, wow, is this still in the test?
Right.
Yeah.
When I jumped into the video over the weekend, it was talking about barrel connectors, British naval connectors, coax cable, and I was like, that stuff still exists. It really does still exist.
Man.
But you don't normally touch that in your day-to-day world anymore.
You've probably made some poor choices if you still do. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know what? And then it ties into what we're going to be talking about in this podcast when we start talking about things like hyperconverged and vSAN and using that top of rack switch to make sure those ones and zeros land on one virtual environment to the other and get written properly. I mean, all that stuff still applies.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I mean, bits go in, bits go out.
Yeah, and making sure that you're creating the right virtual networks on the right VLANs. And I mean, we may not get into a whole lot of that over the course of this podcast, but it will come up.
You never know. Yeah.
So if I were to ask you, Jariah, name the top 5 things that you're excited about and you want to talk about on this podcast as it relates to Nutanix, what would you come back with?
So probably a big one right at the top is automation and getting into automation more easily, right? Because that's how we really help people, help our customers, help our admins, up their own individual value, right? How I do more with equal or less effort. And I say getting into it more easily because automation is such a daunting topic, right? People feel like they're going to sit down and learn how to code and do all the kind of crazy stuff. And maybe for the high end, that's true, but there's so many easier, gentler on-ramps onto how do I just dip my toes into automation and make one thing in my life simpler at a time.
And when you mean automation, do you mean in the world of setting up the Nutanix solutions, or automation post setup where some of those menial admin type roles or admin type processes get automated and you, the admin, never have to even touch it again?
Probably mostly the post setup stuff, right? The living with the technology, right? Because, it's great to have a fast, easy setup process, but that happens like every, couple of years maybe. Something that happens, we call it, day 2 and on, is what really actually affects, you and your experience of running the technology over a period of time.
Right. Is there any clues to what you mean there in terms of automation, things that you're excited about that you guys are automating?
The biggest one, honestly, in my day-to-day meetings that is sort of a hidden gem that people don't know about and they love hearing about is we've basically hidden our own flavor of like if this, then that, if da-da-da, inside of Prism Central. So you can just point and click and say, when this happens, do that, or wait for Friday, change window, and then take an action, add memory, reboot a VM, and then email me and say you're done. And it's codeless automation. You haven't written a single thing.
Now, is that limited to the Acropolis operating system and the Acropolis hypervisor or other hypervisors, or is there ability to use that orchestration beyond Nutanix?
Yeah, it would run in Prism Central, our sort of centralized management location, but it can affect anything, right? You can definitely do that for a vSphere cluster as well.
Okay. What about other things that just happen to have APIs that could be, is there any limit to what you guys could eventually bring into that?
No limit. In fact, it actually can talk to APIs today. So even for some of our stuff, there's some actions in Prism that you call in via an API to get done.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. All right, so that's one. What are the other four that you would spout off as being things you're excited that we're going to be able to cover in this podcast series?
I do love the optionality that we're going to get into, I'm sure, with the next generation of freedom of choice being choose your public cloud to integrate and make a hybrid cloud with what you already have on-prem, right? It's always been our decade-long thesis that, hey, a lot of workloads run better and more cost-effectively on-prem, but there are some that are totally meant for the public cloud. And being able to put them all in one Nutanix bucket, whether that's on-prem or off-prem, and get that same ease of management, ease of migration between those is pretty exciting stuff.
Well, so I'm going to take that one and tie it back to the first one. And I think and talk all the time about the idea that the edge or the data center or both, and then the cloud, those things could just be stretches of each other. Are you having customers where you're seeing them run workloads maybe on the edge at some point that then moves into the cloud and back and forth through automation and other criteria that makes that happen?
Yeah, for sure. The flexibility definitely always is there. And then we actually are just launching a new kind of micro hardware form factor for robo sites, right? Because the software is the same, but the hardware has to be much smaller to run at the edge and hit the right kind of price targets. So we have even smaller nodes coming out that are more of a fit for, like, if you needed to buy 10,000 of these things to go in every store in the world,
right?
They're more economical that way.
Yeah, that retail space, we hear a lot of edge conversations around hyperconvergence, enterprise class computing in retail locations. That's common. And I was just in you ever heard of bonobos?
No.
So bonobos is the answer to my shopping experience after all these years. Their online presence, and you pretty much go online and pick out what you want, but you go in the store and you can either return stuff or you can try it on in the store, then they order it, and next day it shows up at your house. But no more sifting through racks and racks and racks trying to find a 32 waist and a 36 inseam. That's been horrible in my life. But that kind of stuff gets simplified through the power of the cloud, through the power of shopping as a service. And the reason I bring that up is I literally just walked around the corner here in our Charlotte office, and there's the bonobos there, and I walked in. And so I had a great human experience, which I was missing with the online piece. But at the same time, I got the power of the online shopping experience. All that blend into one. So that's cloud-based shopping, retail with an edge component, which I guarantee there's some type of computer sitting in the back of that store so that they can function when they're offline as well. And that's kind of what we're talking about here.
No, 100%. And those are, they're running at the edge, but they're enterprise governed workloads. They need, the same kind of security, the same kind of monitoring, and really ease of deployment, right? Like, when we can get that store, that 10,000 and first store up and running, in maybe an hour for the cluster and an hour for the workloads that run on it, the value is really meaningful.
Yeah. So is Nutanix cloud, or is Nutanix edge, or is Nutanix everything along the way between the two?
Yeah, really, right. It's a big spectrum. And the cool thing is, right, the code that really makes it all run is really very portable, right? So whether you want petabytes of NAS in the data center, you would need gigabytes of NAS on the edge, our CVMs, same code really that runs, kind of in the cloud of your choice.
Right. All right. Give me one more thing you're excited about, then I'll let you off the hook here.
The third one would be probably some pretty good hardware coming down the pipe, right? Which we don't make, of course, but the cool thing is we let you stay attached to whatever you need for your workloads, right? So we're not having to do that, kind of co-engineering to say we need to ship better silicon to get better performance. It's like, oh, what has Intel already shipped? What's AMD coming out with? What's Intel got for storage around the corner that we can just plumb that in, give you the better IO, give you the faster, clock speed, more throughput, whatever you need, so we're not shackled to any one hardware architecture.
Right. So you may not answer. Well, you may not answer this, but have you seen a product called HiveCell? Have you seen HiveCell?
No.
So HiveCell is these little plastic-looking servers that have these interconnects on when you just stack them on top of each other like Legos. Really good edge computing type of solution that every time I talk to those guys, I ask if they're talking to Nutanix about integrating their solution on top of yours. So you're looking it up right now?
Yeah. Just speaking personally, that'd be pretty interesting, right? Because we don't, the only thing that really makes or breaks a CVM, right, is that ability to pass through the disk controller, right? If that thing can get direct access to the disk controller, that's really our only engineering, like hard and fast, in my opinion, requirement, right? Because everything else, like the CVM, is just a virtual machine. So if we can run a VM layer, that can be in business. But we want to have direct access to the storage because we are, writing the bits to every piece of storage, whether it's SSD or HDD or NVMe or all that stuff. So
Right.
it'd be interesting to see if they could do that on their hardware as well.
I'm sure they could. One of the benefits of, so it's got these little interconnects where you just stack them up. You have one patch cable, one power plug that's running into the back of the bottom one. You stack 3 or 4 on top of each other. And then what they have that's unique is you if you took one off of that stack, it's got a battery and it's got Wi-Fi inside it, which the Wi-Fi piece may be the part where it would break down with the Acropolis operating system. I don't know. But it jumps on Wi-Fi. And so you literally can have it in your hands, totally freeform, and it's still running. And now all of a sudden you stack them up again differently, or you move it to the other side of the room and stack them back down. And it really cool concept, and
That's wild.
Very much edge oriented. You throw it under the back desk at the retail location, and it just runs there, and then forward stuff to the cloud as needed. But well, that's good. Going to have a lot more conversations like this. Let's see. You and I have been reaching out to people. We have any specific blogs coming up that we've already identified that we want to do?
There's good stuff on clusters. There's good stuff on TCO, like total cost of owning Nutanix, and investing in your business.
Well, and the clusters thing, let's talk about that real quick. So you guys are running, you guys have announced, and you already have clusters running within Amazon's cloud, which is essentially just Amazon servers running the Nutanix operating system on top of that, right?
Right.
And then you also have the announcement where you're doing that on top of Azure as well. And that's either coming or it already exists. Which one is it?
Yeah, Azure's EA, GA next year.
Okay. I'm going to ask you a real specific question on that because it's one top of mind for me.
Sure.
Workloads in Azure, you get the entitlements of running the Microsoft license because you have it's part of the subscription there. In addition to that, if you're a hyper-converged and VDI guy like me, Windows 10 multi-session is very top of mind for me. If I run Nutanix cluster on top of Azure, if I'm going to get multi-session Win 10 as one of my entitlements there?
Speaking as an entirely uninformed and not authoritative Microsoft licensing expert, it sure seems like you ought to me. Let me ask you a question, Andy. Help me understand, if I was making a decision between Windows 10 multi-session versus traditional Windows Server, which is already multi-session, like what are my inputs to pick one or the other?
Really, it comes down to your application use cases and application supportability by the application vendor. If I've got application X and I go to the vendor and say, look, I've got 3 people leveraging it on Windows Server, they're going to look at me like, well, we don't support it on Windows Server. And I'm going to go, well, the kernel's the same. And like, I don't care. We don't support it on Windows Server. Like, okay, now it's running on Windows 10 with 3 users. And they're going to look at me and go, that's great. It's Windows 10. We don't support multi-session. I'm like, okay, I had 2 guys log out. Now tell me what you can't help me fix. It's really about application vendor support. And it does, you do always take the chance in multi-session of somebody stepping on the other, or maybe there's some security crossover somewhere along the way. But, those cloud workloads, it's all about consumption and trying to be as efficient as possible. So if I can just get 3 users on a single Windows 10 instance and not cause myself problems, then I've got 3 times the capacity almost instantly, really.
Makes sense. So it could be an application friction reducer.
Yeah. So I don't know, maybe somewhere along the way, if you run into somebody who has the answer to that, which probably means they work at Microsoft or know somebody that works at Microsoft, but I'm looking for that. I'm looking for that answer along the way because I think that really is going to help Nutanix on top of Azure. That's going to help that story a lot. Got it.
Yeah, it's something hard to get hands-on experience with outside of playing with it in Azure.
Right. Yeah. Well, and outside of Microsoft saying yay or nay, really. But anyway, okay. Well, Gerard, I appreciate you jumping on this one. I think we got a good start here. I'm looking forward to I think it's next week. It might be the week after that. I know we've got the holidays coming up, but I'm looking forward to doing this every week, and we'll get a guest author, whoever wrote the blog on, and if they don't show up, you and I'll just read the blog and we'll talk about it, and we'll be consistent about providing content out there. I think that's number one. We did a Citrix podcast today that we didn't have an author signed up, so we just went online, found what we liked, we reviewed it, and we just talked through it, and we ended up just filling up 55 minutes worth of talk. And hopefully, people will get a lot out of that content, especially the fact that it's consistently coming out of us, and that's it's goal number one: be consistent.
Yeah, it's in our DNA, right? Be able to fill up the meeting. Well,
honestly, it's for technical guys, we can talk all day long. At the same time, we just being consistent. We got to force ourselves not to take a week off just because we had a good excuse to take a week off. People want content to be consistent, and I'll make that happen. If I'm nothing else, I'm consistent.
Sounds good.
Well, before I let you go, anything outside the realm of Nutanix that you would want people to know about Jiraiya?
Something new to me this year that is worth sharing. So adventofcode.com. If you are a coder, if you're a scripter, if you want to be less rusty at being that, like I do, they put up some holiday-themed programming challenges every day in December. And they stay up forever. You can go back and do past years. You can take more than 25 days to complete them. So a lot of fun. So check out adventofcode.com. And it won't be hard to work through them faster than I am, but I'm having fun doing it.
Yeah, that actually does sound like fun. And the problem I have is time, right? Having the time to go do something like that. But if it's something you enjoy doing and you'd rather do that than watching the latest episode of The Crown with your wife at night, which is what I end up doing. Or gets worse, like, have you seen Southern Charm?
I have not seen Southern Charm. Most of my stuff outside work tends to be sci-fi themed. So right now is a great time of year because we've got new Discovery and new Mandalorian.
If you want to just completely waste an hour or so of your life, just watch some of this stuff that's on Hulu and Netflix around, I guess, what do we call the real life drama stuff?
Reality TV?
Reality TV. Sorry, I didn't know what to call it anymore. It's become such a natural part of TV. It's not even,
TV,
it's just now TV. Yeah. Anyway, so I guess that would be the one joke I would make at myself is always looking for things to watch with my significant other, and sometimes that's just what it ends up being, and we just sit there and make fun of ourselves for sitting there watching, but we can't turn it off. So
there you go.
That's pretty sad. But all right. Well, I appreciate you jumping on, and good luck with the holidays. If I don't talk to you before then, I think we will. I'm not even sure what the schedule is, but we'll get these things going, and hopefully we'll provide some additional resources for people to keep their Nutanix knowledge up to date while they're walking the dog or something.
Yeah, man. Thanks, Andy.
All right, man. Thank you. Have a good rest of your day.
You too.